MEC Nkosi ngopha abantu eli xesha. Unfortunately, this time arrives when we are in deep hurt. Sibuhlungu, inhliziyo zingamahlwili. We are dying. It's been 366 days. Uyinene wabulawa. So thuswa kokubulawa kukwasa umntana ufunda eWits University. So as women, we worry if we are going to come back alive. We worry even when we're at home. Basavukana, sipilana. So that's where we are, and that is who we are. And then you are bringing us here about izinto ezenzekayo that are perpetuating and enabling patriarchy. Uba isihlukumeze ohlobo. So thank you for your time. And when the poster came out, Minister, imibuzo yokuqala imininzi were about the quote. Mandifundile quote that got abantu interested. Uthi women must understand their strategic task in society in order to achieve equality. The transformational change that the system should embark on is a necessary chapter for the greater good. Why must women be the ones who are understanding? Uthini MEC.
Thanks kokuqala mandibulele ngeli xesha nawe osipha lona because awunike mna kuphela but also you provide an opportunity for us to unpack and reposition the sector in education by virtue of being an MEC for education and also the strategic location of the sector within the society itself. No, we raise a lot of discussion kuba sinento ethi singabantu abanembali. I usually say, in fact, even in the past session of the legislature, I was arguing that we are a nation whose history is a history of unresolved. And ngalo lonke ixesha funeka lanto isoloko ikhona kuthi. And part of that history ile ngxaki is manifesta ngepatriarchy. Kube ngathi kune male dominance kwi society God's given engeyo creation of a man. So basically we wanted to engage in particular the women within the sector to appreciate that they can play their own vital role without being beggars from men for them to be affirmed in the positions of power and authority. Because our understanding ndoba urhulumente ukwazile ucreate a platform through policy evolutions as government which then gives rise to the women leadership. But ifela ke ngoku ibe kuba ingaba ke ngoku i-counterparts ngelo xesha ezinikwe ipower ziyayi-appreciate na intoba there could be no success of any nation without the emancipation of women first and foremost. Because i-triple oppression kwi-context yabantu boMzantsi Afrika reflect more on the issue of women in particular. Because bona bacinezeleka ngokokuba bengabantu abantsundu, bacinezeleke ngento yobana bengomama, bacinezeleke ngento yobana bengabantu abangenanto. So if you want to see poverty is quite visible in women, not because of them in numbers, but because of the structure, the social structure by which it has been designed. So kufuneka ke sibe nendlela yokuresponda to that particular question.
But one would argue, for instance, MEC, when the poster was put up, abantu babuza umbuzo, but why us? Why is it the women? You speak of policies that have been adopted, but wouldn't you argue that though, because majority it is the men who are in positions of power to be able to make that change and ensure that those policies are implemented, would you not then argue that even if you create as policies, women are not going to succeed, or women are not going to step up, because the very same people who have, be it a political power to make a change, are still men. So therefore, you cannot argue that you are liberating women with these policies, yet the very same implementers are the ones who are still ensuring that patriarchy prevails.
Yes, I agree. Yes, I agree with you, because this is a twofold debate. You needed a reorientation of the mind, both at the level of the male counterparts and the female counterparts. That's why when we were engaging the women in the sector about 2 weeks back, we further elaborated the discussion yoba. For them to be liberated, they must appreciate that they can't be liberated without them being prepared to bruise the men, because of the manner by which they give sometimes unnecessarily undue respect to male folks. Of course, because of the tradition, of course, because of the orientation from the religious point of view, and also because of the manner by which the structure itself, the social structure itself, is designed. Mhlambe mandiyicacise ngolu hlobo. Ndikhe ndabukela elections zamazwe amabini in the past few years. The electoral presidential elections of United States of America, where Umama Clinton was a beacon of hope for the women and for a particular agenda for the Americans, you know. But what kills that campaign were the burdens of his or her husband. That kills the campaign. Now, in essence, it means the women didn't vote at her on the basis of her being a woman or on the basis of her being capable, but on the basis of the burden that she carries to the ballot box of her own husband. You can cite that even also here at home, when the ruling party was going to its own national conference. It was for the first time that women could pronounce on the interest of women in affirming the leadership of the women. Leave out other dynamics involved at that space, because sometimes men can act as if they champion a women agenda, manipulating the same environment. That's another experience that would have not to take your eyes off the ball on it. But what I'm saying is, it's gonna be key for us to be deliberate, conscious, a bit mad, and a bit arrogant, for us to be able to liberate ourselves and equally liberate women as the key strategic component in the social structure itself. So kuyabaluleka ke into yokuba nabo mama babe ne-confidence kubo, bahlukane noba ne-confidence emadodeni, because amaxesha amanintsi bangabo aba banominator amadoda and undermine themselves.
But kaloku MEC, there's a lot we would have to consider on that.
Yes.
And it might take the whole year.
Yes.
Because you must remember, most of the time, xa sisiza etafileni, we are bleeding. we are wounded.
Yes.
Tina as women sizalwa nje. You learn through bona umama wakho, umakhulu, udabs, umakazi, learning to survive and learning to overcome into ezithile because of the very same man.
Yes.
So not to say we must be viewed as weak people. No.
Yes. Yes.
But at the same time, others argue that do not call me imbokoto ube ufuna kundincoma kuba nolomncomo wakho obona obo bumbokoto
Akho genuine.
sube kufuneke ndiveze ubunganga bam kuba ndisilwa wena nobudoda bakho obundicinezelayo.
Yes.
So I would want us to agree on that, to say almost majority of the time the spaces that we have, Tina, we have to fight for them. Remember, Tina sipha ekugqibeleni kuqala ezinye race kuqala zihle, and then ke ngoku ibe ngamadoda amnyama phambi kwethu, and then ibe sithi, and then we've got other groups, other minority groups that are still, oppressed.
Yes.
So umuntu ongumama akuba akakwazi uzilwela.
Yes.
Uyakwazi uzilwela mhlawumbe unqaphile. Now make reference to why kuhleli mina nawe apha bengekho abantu abangomama besebe lakho kodwa sithetha ngabantu abangomama. MEC baphi abantu abangomama awubashiyanga ngemva bevuza nabo igazi bebuhlungu bezingqaleha. Kutheni uthetha ngezinto zomama? Yes, you are the political head. Kutheni uthetha ngezinto zomama, uthetha ngenhlungu zethu, ungumuntu ongutata, unabo abantu abangomama eofisini yakho?
No, we have started that discussion. Of course, there are issues. As I said, structurally, you would always have those power relations in the society, but it's a discussion that is necessary. And one of those discussions, one can argue, Indoba, is irritative but necessary. Irritative but necessary in the sense that indlela urhulumente astructurishe ngayo sometimes we need some innovative kind of interventions. Let me take an example. For example, if for example the SMS post, let's come to this department. The SMS post are a product of authority of the MEC.
Yes.
Now the MEC consistently don't see a need of decisively taking a decision of affirming, leave out whether the MEC is a male or a female, but does not appreciate the gender equity and redress within the appointment of the SMS posts, right? Then that becomes a problem. So that's why I'm then saying some of the decisions are decisions that when you are given space to contribute to the cause, you must optimally utilize it. Because that opportunity comes once upon a time. I never anticipated that one day I would be an MEC. Today I am. But when I'm gone, one question that I must ask is whether have I been able to put the ascendancy of women leadership in the sector on my agenda. I may not answer it today, but I'm saying post some years or post some months to come, that question will come back. You were given an opportunity to deal with these inequalities in the society using the authority and power that you have, but you didn't.
So, since you've been in the office, MEC, what systems would you say personally, as MEC Gade, you have put in place to ensure that, one, this space that you have created for women to ascend to power, there's protection?
Yes, when we arrived, we arrived fortunately when the sector was spearheaded in discussion the organizational structure, a new organogram, and also coming from a service delivery model which defines what must be done, who must do that, at what time, where. Now, it was an opportunity for me to deal with the question that you are asking. For example, we agree at a strategic level that part of our affirmation on key strategic positions in the sector will be, one, to appreciate the upward migration, upward mobility of the workforce. That's one. Two, to agree that we'll have to rationalize the sector itself. It must appreciate the dynamics of the province. Thirdly, it must appreciate that women are a dominant factor in the society. 65 to 70 workforce here are women. So even in leadership position, that must be reflective.
Undibethe emlonyeni MEC, because as much as that looks good on paper, but omama bakho abaninzi baku salary scale level 2 to 4. When you go higher, they are missing omama bakho. Where do the women disappear to within the department? Because you cannot have, for instance, a situation whereby the department will argue that siyazama, ikhona improvement. Kodwa there is such a huge gap between your level 4 to level 8, and 11, 10 ukunyuka, it's male dominated. Where are the women disappearing to?
If you can look to the profile of the department in particular, in terms of women leadership, I agree with you. Uzafika belapha ku level 2, 3, and 4. Right? But battling even in level 4, because level 4 is equivalent to principals of schools, where a problem amaxesha amaninzi comes from, because society yethu inayo landithi sifuna principal ongutata, sifuna umntana womgquba bakwezopolitics, sifuna umntana womgquba, sifuna umuntu oyindoda, and all that stuff, and in the process undermine the capabilities and skills and strength of women, and which then comes back to the argument that I brought in, that at a particular point you will have to be a bit decisive, a bit arrogant, and a bit mad about ensuring that you deal with the redress, because it's not going to be an accident. It must be deliberate. 2, when you look at level 5, 6, 7, again you are not going to get those females. They vanish. Uzozifumana xa sifika apha kwi deputy directorship. Ufika zikhona majority there. You know, there are 2 reasons for that. It's because of this upward migration that I'm talking about. They get in as ordinary workers, promoted to assistant directorship, deputy directorship, and then directors. Now, where it matters most, one, is when it comes to this level, yet directorship, ukuzothi xhaxhe apha phezulu kwi-level ye-HODs. Right? Ubuyajonga apha kwi-profile yethu, uzofika you have got 4, if I'm not mistaken, district directors that are women.
Yes, you've got 4.
Yes, you've got 4 of them. In fact, the 2 are acting. You still have to affirm them. And remember, you are undergoing interviews there.
And you've got 2 cluster directors,
yes,
who are female.
Who are females, yes. So you still have to go on interviews there. But I'm saying, even if you go that academic process, that academic process must not change the narrative of the social structure, and must not change the ambitions of bringing in an intervention that appreciates that beyond a women, their skills, capacity, innovation, and ideas. So it can't be right that, for example, when you come to directors, you don't get females, and you get them at the level of the chief directorship, and even there, we tried with the leadership of the sector to address that sometime last year. And again, you have got 4 DDGs. 2 are males and 2 are females. Interestingly, the 2 women are acting. So still it's going to be a test of time to leadership. Whether are you going to continue with a male-dominant phenomenon in the sector?
Would you then not want to push a policy?
No, policy is there. It's just a question of affirming.
Who is not implementing?
You know?
Who is not implementing?
It's us who have not been affirming there. So hence I'm saying it's something that we just needed to to take a cautious decision to say, look, the ability, the performance, the skill is brought in by effort. You give people chance to perform, then they acquire skill, then they perform. So if you don't want them to participate in that space, how are they going to be the best out of the best that you would want to see? So that's why I'm saying ayonto ifanele kwenza ibe ngathi siyenzelelelana.
Shem Toho.
No. It's a policy. Equity redress is a policy of government. So afunekanga si escape umzekelo sifuna escape nge-academic processes ze interviews. Yes, interviews are there, but interviews must be able to not to change policies that are fundamental in government. Yes.
So I want us to move to school governance a bit, because you mentioned that salary scale level 4 yethu ikhona ingxaki napha, rightfully so. If then we have a policy that should be enforceable, do you then now as a government not have a responsibility to even engage more the non-professional team members of your SGBs that decide who becomes a principal of a school? I mean, uthethile now uthi umntana omgquba asifuna uphathwa ngumama, asifuna uthwani, siyawazi amandla SGBs, because yonke into iqala iphelela kwi-SGBs. Then lizawuthini ke ngoku uxanduva lwenu ukwenzela into yokuba moving forward in 2 years time asithi akho mntu unqabe njengeprincipal engumama high school, for instance?
Ngokwepolicy i-SGB iyarecommenda kuthi siqashe, but xa irecommenda i-SGB recommend umuntu omnye, recommend abantu abathathu. Then if for example kwaba bantu bathathu akekho umuntu ongumama, in my view that's an oversight.
That is an oversight.
That's an oversight.
In your
because view. Yes, because there is, because you should put it categorically clear that ngokwe profile yezikolo zethu ngoku, this is where we are in terms of women representation. Ne? And your recruitment policy must be along those lines that begins to tease where you are in terms of the gender equity. And therefore consciously say, fine, go to the interviews, but would want a mechanical process that recognizes that we needed to address this particular perpetuity of patriarchy via recruitment policy. Umzekelo, akho nto ikunqandayo into yobana you must not go to what is called a positive discrimination. Discrimination, but positive. Positive in the sense that it gives the desired leveling of ground between the two contending forces. You know? So, lendo ye recruitment through interviews is just one, but within other instruments of determining what must happen. But the unfortunate part of it is that siyayithanda i-short circuiting. Umzekelo, mandenza umzekelo ngami, bandingayikude. Xa kurecruitwa apha ndizawurecommendelwa amagama ama-3 okanye ama-5 depending to uba yiphi lo post. Ne? Ayikho automatic that I must appoint the number 1 that the panel has recommended. The policy says so. But because you are running away from explaining yourself, why have you picked number 3? And in the process of running away from explaining yourself, why have you chose number 3? You then undermine the policies of government. Because that on its own, that gives you 5 candidates to be selected amongst, gives you a space to go and take number 5. And you have dealt with the redress matter that I'm talking about. But because you don't want to offend number 1 and number 2, and you don't want to go and explain yourself that the institution looks like this now, ne? The institution is falling short of this particular category within the society. And therefore, when we design the recruitment policy now, via the processes, the advert and what, it must address this.
So, for argument's sake, MC, usukela namhlanje. So how do we ensure, for instance, in 2 years' time, when we look at leadership breakdown, the gender breakdown, principals zethu in the province, it does not look like what it looks like now? What would you say, Wena, are the steps that you're going to take? Remember, there's the, I think what someone sent me earlier on was, you know, we are kumsha urhulumente wethu esinaye, and on paper, the policies zethu are world class. But we want now the practicality of izinto. How are we going to get there? Would you go as far as saying to a district director, for instance, district directors, plans for starting from the following year, this is the desired outcome that we would like as per policy, and go as far as pushing them and saying, this is the desired outcome for 2023, and each district, this is the target that you have to meet, and off we go?
No, we are not going to start there. We're going to start here.
Apagwe officing.
We're going to start here because it's a matter that, it's not a matter that we must negotiate.
Okay.
It's a policy. We must start here in the head office, democratize the workplace in a manner that appreciate the demographics of the society we are. So if you continue to be what we are now, right, would have not done 50% of our work. We are a department that is almost everywhere in the society. There is no department that is everywhere like education. So the social orientation of education is key in the transformation agenda of the entire society. Because there is no village anywhere in the country that does not have school. And there is no household anywhere where there is no kid that is under the age of going to school. So the extent of influence of the sector on the politics of the sector, on the politics of the society in general, and the structure by which government should look like is fundamental here. So hence I'm saying, ours is not just to teach but also to learn from the dynamics of the society as well as an institution. So hence I'm saying the first hurdle ekufuneka siqabele kuyo ukuphendula umbuzo othi le ndlela sime ngayo as head office right now.
I-office yakho yona ime njani? Mhlawumbe umuntu uzothi masiqala apho.
Apha officeini no, apha officeini si right. Let me put it that way.
Okay.
Because we have got a chief of staff, which is a male, an advisor that is a female, a PA that is a female, an NO that is a female, a receptionist that is a female, a PNO that is a female.
So kulula ukuthi qalani nijonge kum.
Yes. Then you have got your logistics and administration, which is a male. So predominantly they are female.
Now, xoxoba kancinci ngaphandle, you are currently sitting at only 39% of women abafumana business allocation kwi-department yakho. Ngelishwa nenhlungu enkulu 10% ngabantu abatsha. Asike ihlike ngoku sijonge kubantu abakhubazekileyo.
That's one hurdle again that I think is a target, because remember we are just graduating from a very serious debate in the country. If you look to the COVID-19 procurement processes, wherein we are the first department to utilize a decentralized model on the PPEs to an extent of appointing 261 SMEs. There is no department that has done that, not in the province, in the country. Now, what we have not done is to make a breakdown of that 261 in the context of the demographics that we are talking about. Because my attitude was that, first and foremost, let's localize, recycle the economy of the province within, so that as a bigger department in the provincial government space with a bigger budget is able to find its own footprints across the regions. 45% of the budget of the provincial government comes here. So if we have got a crisis of poverty, whilst 45% of the budget comes here, it means we are culprits. Because those that are sharing 55 may have ambitions, but they may not have tools to do that. So hence I'm saying it's going to be key that part of the interventions as a sector don't just get into skewed, narrow interpretation of the sector as just a sector of teaching and learning, right? But also as a catalyst of the transformation agenda in the province, because of its size, because of the resources allocated to it, but lastly, because of its own strategic, supposedly, orientation. Because if asikwazi could develop it thinking right as a sector, then it means all of us must pack our bags and go home. Because the sector le efuneka iproduce abantu bokucinga for the nation across all sectors of the economy. So the path of the country depends on the orientation in education. Hence I'm saying this debate of today is the beginning of the discussions that must engulf across all departments and profile themselves to see, during this period, what is it that we have done? Ingabi decisions ezisizithathayo, are they in perpetuity of the status quo, or are they in advancement of the cause, such that we are prepared to take unpopular decisions?
a question that just came in, MEC. Umuntu uyabuza uthi, taking into consideration, you acknowledging that when it comes to business allocation, there is room for improvement. How deliberate were you taking sijonge nje le case ugqiba uyibalisa ye-PPE? How deliberate were you in ensuring that you try your level best as a department to get i-businesses eziqhutywa ngabantu abangoomama ukuthi zifumane nazo kwesi sonke? I think where they're coming from is that it's as if women inclusion is an activity. Oh, let us include women. Sibalibele toch abantu abangomama. The othering that continues. So, qala uthi, how deliberate were you? And then the follow-up question would be from me to say, do you believe that in your department that women empowerment, support and development are at the core of what you are trying to achieve? Okanye, see afterthought, akuveli data enje that only 39%. Then we remember women.
No, I think you have nailed it because honestly, when we were dealing with this question of the PPEs in particular, just to cite an example, at the heartbeat of that process was not this discussion that we are for a number of reasons. One is that we were rushing time, and we have not sorted ourselves in terms of the strategy, in terms of the business allocation itself. We have not yet arrived there, but already we have engaged on the discussion. So I'm saying it's part of an eye-opener for me in particular, and also the leadership of the sector to say, look, we must be deliberate in taking some of these decisions. Of course, hence I was saying earlier on, zikhona izigqibo ongazuqhatyelwa zandla ngazo. But bakukhumbula abantu sele wasithela ba esasigqibo yayisisigqibo necessary to be taken in the best interest of today. So because we can't enjoy to be living in the past in the present, to be living with the past in the present, there must be innovations in trying to tilt the balance of forces, whether you talk business allocation, whether you talk the upward movement of the workforce, whether you talk the issue of the recruitment. For example, we issue this week that would want 200 kids for ETDP SETA, for example. For me, that statement is not enough.
You want them to be specific?
Yes.
How many girl children?
Yes. You must be mechanical. You must be mechanical. You must be mechanical, because if you are not mechanical, you are going to purge women.
So you're going to fix that poster?
Yes.
And when it comes out?
Yes.
Okay.
You must be mechanical.
Yeah.
That you want 50-50 representation, for example. As an example.
All right.
Because 50-50 in this country is a policy, by the way.
So how much would you give yourself, the office yakho, the department at large, to say, this is our fight against the gender division of labor? Because that's one of the sore points about, the emancipation and the support of women, is that labor they're just gendered roles. That's why you'll find your level 2s and level 3s and salary scale being abantu abangomama, kugcwele reception says ngabantu abangomama. So how much would you rate yourself? How far are you doing? How are you doing?
No, we are of course trying, but of course we are far below the standard required. We are far below the standard required. Hence, mhlambi part of the interventions ezizawufuneka sizijongile closer is that question, because for example, ubuyajonga ne-conduct both of learners and teachers is a reflection of what you are asking. It's quite very easy to see a teacher that abuse a kid, in particular women. And it's quite very difficult to discipline that teacher, and quite very difficult to find him or her with sanction. Some even get out of the system using the prolonged, tedious process of investigation and discipline, therefore. So there is more work to be done in terms of monitoring policies, closing up the gaps that are there, because I always have a sentiment that taking a decision is something else, but seeing that decision the light of the day, that's something else. So again, kuzawufuneka sibe nendlela yokuqiniseka into yoba we improve on the turnaround time of cases. We improve on the turnaround time of cases so that you don't put the victims into a state of vulnerability. Like for example, uyawufika nabajustice mosikhona lo case yoba kuthiwe umuntu hayi bebanjiwe but uphinde waphuma because ngexesha bekufuneka ngalo i-evidence and what have you kangifumaneke, and zento ke sixa sizibizayo on procedural grounds umuntu aphele ba-acquitted. So we just needed to tighten up the issue of the labor and also the legal department to ensure that we assist with the moment, and also we respond quicker than we are now, so that abantu abangade ba-resign abantu, because xa be-resign bayayazi uba akho nto unomenza yona because ayo employee yakho, by the way.
And uthetha ngento ebuthathaka MEC, kuhlukunyezwa kwabantwana esikolweni ngootitshala. So how do you know ngoku that aniqashi bantu abazi-pedophiles, for instance? How do you know? How do you know?
Kule level sikuyo upper head office, people are sanctioned in the context of vetting. So it's not easy for them to escape the vetting. But we have not yet arrived to the level of middle management and downwards. Uxhomekeka nje kuphela kweza processes ze recruitment, and also nendlela iscrutiny esenziwe ngayo by those panels that were assigned to do that. I should think that's another gap that I think we would have to find a way, because the possibilities that you can appoint a criminal on the basis that probably akanayo a registered criminal offense. Akanayo a registered criminal offense. But abantu
never found guilty by a court of law.
But abanye abantu bayamazi bayi-rapist, by the way le.
Sikhula esenza lento.
Into yobana kungabikho umuntu umreportayo okanye kungabikho case ke yahlala ngaye. That's something else for another day. Yes.
Do you believe that though there is also a gap in how even those who are in charge of school governance, that is your SGB, and how they are capacitated in how to handle these cases?
Yeah, we have a team. We have a team that is dedicated. Your Mr. Manxoko, that deals with the issue of capacitation of SGBs, and in terms of the workshops and whatever seminars that are conducted for them to be equally to the task of managing and governing our institutions of learning. But we have not done enough on that aspect. Uyayazi ba kule nto sithetha ngayo kukhe kubekho abantu abangadisciplinekiyo because they are good teachers.
Give us an example.
Umzekelo masithi wena abuselwe umntana. Because this is a maths teacher.
And there's a shortage.
There is a shortage of teachers.
Core subjects.
And kubekho abantu abathi hayi, if you discipline this one and dismiss him or her, then will be suffering the consequences. So there will always be such kind of awkward justifications, you know. So hence I was saying there is a need of a reorientation of the mind, not only to those that we think are in authority, but also nakwabanye abantu nje general, sikwazi uyahlula into right kwe wrong, into wrong ingajustifywa yenziwe bengathi right, because umzekelo nje banisitsho you are a maths teacher or you are a science teacher and esisikolo siza nawe, i-results esikolo siza ngawe, and therefore that gives you a license to rape abantwana babantu, because xa unogxothwa akuzubakho results. So masikubhatale ngorape abantwana babantu.
Let me put you on the spot, MEC. Do you believe that the sexual offenders list should be made public? Ndingumzali, ndifundisa umntana esikolweni. Kule meko siphila kuyo ngoku, I would want to know whether umntana wam usafe na kwesi sikolo nabatishala. But andikwazi uyenza loo nto leyo because a list is not made available to us, the public. Nangona kwamanye sike sibone kwamanye amazwe umzekelo isenziwa public bade bathi abantu uba lo muntu uzawuthenga indlu kule ndawo bathi asoze uzohlala apha basiyakoyika sikubone kula list.
No, uba uyayijonga i-level ye-gender based violence in the country, the lawmakers must consider that. The lawmakers must consider that. If there is no piece of legislation that talks to that, it's high time that the lawmakers must consider putting a motion and discuss that thing. Because the problem ozobanayo, if you don't deal with it both at a legislative level and also at an administrative level, uzoba ne problem. Let me cite an example for you. One experience that was bad for me that I was watching on a national television. I repeat, on a national television. That case of Omotoso in Port Elizabeth. Akukho nto ifani ekuvunyelweni kwe-prosecution amagqwetha ukubuza i-victim into yokubana ubone ntoni bingakanani le nto begripha ngayo lo mntu. Can you see how humiliating that statement is?
Yeah.
And to what extent as a statement
You relive the trauma.
to what extent as a statement encourages people not to report cases? I commend that women that responded on that question.
Cheryl
Because
Zondi.
not everybody would have been able to respond to that question. Immediately, such kind of questions are not regulated from a legislative point of view. Forget about women responding on some of the traumatic cases that they have. So hence I'm saying, as lawmakers, there is a need of combating GBV not later than yesterday. And part of that is to ensure that you close loopholes that are there as a result of absence of policy and legislation. Hence I'm citing this case yaseBhayi uba akukho nto ithi lamagqwetha wangayibuzi laa nto, but from an ethical and a moral point of view, when uxelela ntoni le question.
Igama lakhe nguCheryl Zondi.
Yes.
But MEC, omnye umntu would argue that, but the very same thing iyenzeka ezikolweni.
Yes.
That kuzawuvakala le case abize umntana i-SGB abekwe apha unaye utishala ebekuplitile wathini xa ekuplita xa sesithetha phandle wakuthumelela imessage khupha ifowuni ziphe ezo zinto. It's happening.
Yes. No, that's why I'm saying part of this administration, if you look to the current administration, wants to cleanse itself. Nobody ever thought that we can publicize the list of people that have got tenders, to an extent of even publicizes the owners of the directorship of the businesses, entities that got financial support in the form of business with government. So I'm trying to say, yenye yemicelimingeni esiya kuyo sizayofika pha. Singaba anguka sikayofika phathi sizayofika, because each and every day kukho into entsha oyifundayo ba, if I could have dealt with this thing yesterday, ngengalindishanga kule ndawo ndikuyo ngoku. Yebo. For example, there's been consistent argument yoba part of the problem gender-based violence indlela society etolika ngayo abantu abangomama nabantwana bangomama. And at the heartbeat of that discussion, ayikho a debate that talks about the upbringing of boys. Yes, the upbringing of boys. Now, ikwenzela ke ngokulonto ubunzima, because inayo i-suggestion eyinikayo ngongathi mhlawumbi for the women to survive there must be interventions. They can't survive without interventions, which is not the case. It's part of what I think should be extracted out of the minds of the male dominant thinking broadly in the society. Umzekelo lo mntana wasedutywa wakwa Zozo ukwasa ndazi utatakhe uZozo teacher Willowvale, one of the principals of high schools there. Zeludumile, yes. Lo mfana kuthethwa ngaye apha. When I was over the weekend at home, ndincokola nabantwana baphakuma ekhaya. Ukamva ibrother kalonwabo endala, umntu firstborn yaphakuma ekhaya, is arguing that lo mntana uyamazi lo inkwenkwe. Wayefunda nolonwabo eMida. Now, ndibe ne-interest uba why ezawudamazi xa ebefunda nolonwabo. Uyayibona? Because ulonwabo awunomazi umuntu kube sike wafunda nomnye isikolo esikhulu. So there was a relationship at that age, at that stage, between Lonabo and these boys. You know, so that's what provoked my interest. But xa kukho such kind of lessons, ne, ndayinxiba. But it means one day or sooner I might be requested to answer a question about this mine, which is grown up. So I'm saying, zizinto ekufuneka sonke ke ngosibe ngabantu abasoloko beready indoba, let's take an extra mile in ensuring that our upbringing of our own kids are at least resounding. They understand again indoba enye yengxaki esinayo as a country, we run short of parents. We run short of parents. Parenthood is a problem in the South African context. It may not be a problem elsewhere, but here is a problem because it's either abantwana bethu abahlali nathi bahlala nomakhulu notamkhulu, okanye bathi ngose behlala nathi singakwazi ukuba zi-parents.
Bazilawule.
Okanye singabi nayo i-character of being a parent, because I always argue that there is a difference between a person who has capabilities to produce a kid and a parent. Those are two different things. True. Yes. Usengana abantwana abayi-10 but still not be a parent. Usengangabi naye umntana but still be a parent. Because parent is what is required of courage and character out of an individual. It's not the amount of kids you have been able to produce.
Would you then not argue, MEC, that ipart enye yezinto ezenza kube nzima ukubona mhlawumbi intluva yento yokuba because ndiyafuna bakhona abantwana babukeleyo nje basincokola apha ndiyafuna bayazi into yokuba lukhona uncedo mabangahlukumezeki ezikolweni. Would you then not argue that mhlawumbi i-data management yethu yenziwa ku-SA-SAMS and izikolo should be able to feed i-system when umntana, for instance, falls pregnant, and immediately when you've got a minor who falls pregnant, i-district must be able to pick up, and then psychosocial services zikwazi ulandelelela uba how does a 15-year-old become pregnant. Mhlawumbi phana phaya you'll pick up that ngutishala, nguprincipal, lo mntana uyahlukunyezwa or yonke loo nto leyo. What is the plan around data management so that iyancedisana nayo yonke le nzame efuneka siyenzile to protect these kids?
If there is anything positive that we must all take it up and learn out of COVID-19 is the data management. COVID-19 has brought that concept to us. We are managing data every day now because of COVID-19. Whether you talk of psychosocial services required by teachers, learners, the affected parents of the infected learners, or family members of the affected teacher or a non-teaching staff. So whether you talk about fatalities of teachers or non-teaching staff, you know, what is good about COVID-19? It has opened up eyes of government. It has opened up eyes of government because it has given us a bit of cuteness on data, statistics, and management of issues on day-to-day basis. So that's why currently we have introduced the telehealth psychosocial services in all districts of education now. Because when I was talking to the HOD, I was saying we may be in a problem now as government because of the infected and affected and fatalities, of course. But there is a crisis looming, not for education, for the entire public services in the country. The post-COVID-19 traumas that are going to arise. When individually, your mind come back, realize that a particular so and so whom I was working with is no more. Yabona ngoku bayasweleka abantu i-COVID. Abanye sibangcwabe nobangcwaba because abanye sibangcwaba basweleka because usweleka namhlanje in a space of 5 days funeka engcwatyiwe. Uyokothuka mhlawumbe emveni kwenyanga ba nobani wasweleka. Kuzafika ilixa lokokuba ngoku sibe ne post-COVID trauma almost the entire 90% of public service. Uzayibona ngantoni lanto? Uzayibona nge-sick notes, uzayibona nge-social disorders ezizakwenzeka because by that time there will be realization that they have lost loved ones. Now kuse-chaotic ngoku, wonke umuntu focuse kuye, akakabi nanto ithi hey kwenzeka ntoni pha, kwenzeka ntoni pha, kwenzeka ntoni pha. So that's why I then said to the HOD, let's expand the mandate of the sector. Be prepared to have a far-reaching plan that talks to what is likely to happen post-COVID and how do we respond. So that the government at that time, angothuki xa i-underperformance is down to zero, because majority of the workforce is either on sick notes, or is either has got social disorders, or is either has been affected heavily by the anxiety that is crippling in the public services sector. So that's why I'm then saying part of the task that we have now is to ensure that the psychosocial services is expanded beyond the infected and affected ones, and be able to get to know exactly what you are talking about, into yoba ingaba ke ngoku xa sikule meko akukho possibility nayo into yobana singakhe sicinge fana uba sirayithi sonke apha endlini kanti asikho rayithi. Bekufanele uba iphikishiwe loo nto during the administrations, registrations and all that stuff. Because i-SASAMS yethu has got a variety of components within itself. It can pick up those elements and is the best instrument systemically to give you a profile of the department. Yabona nje banhle lapha nje ngoku uyakwazi ukuba ucofa ixhosha apha edepartmentini ufumane iprofile esikolo ungakhange udubuya pha akho need ubuyombuza la principal. Yabo, we are beginning to even upscale it to a level where we must be able to see the operations of the school without even getting a dashboard report from them, because they may be misleading you, by the way.
Okay, 2 questions, MEC, before you wrap up. Am I correct to say majority of temporary teachers are female?
Yes.
And we know that majority of your households zethu zikhokhelwa ngabantu abangomama. So one of the questions that came through is that MEC uvakala kamnandi ngezi plans anazo to enforce as policies. But you have temporary teachers during this pandemic who have not been paid yet. So they want to know, is the MEC aware? And if the MEC is aware, what are the plans to address? Because noko yintlungu uthi ungumama unabantwana abaninzi nalincinci unayo imali funeka uphangele ngayo and there's nothing you're getting ekugqibeleni.
No, that report has landed to the office of the MEC.
All right.
There are 3 categories of people that are affected. One is the sensitive one, the ones that have exited the system. I've got 5 cases of people that exited the system. Omnye ke 28th ka February, omnye ngo January, I've forgotten the date. Umama boy walapha
Ndiyavuya lazi negama lakhe uzawulandeleleka.
Umama u Machaya wase Ngqamakwe Khotane. I've forgotten the names, but there are 5 of them. Immediately I picked up that. I then established a task team led by the acting DDG, Naledi Mbude, to quickly ensure that those exited employees of the department, their cases are sorted out by the department now, between us and the pensions in Pretoria.
Yes.
So that you don't have people abasengxakini yothinjelwa benemali zabo ezilapha.
Yes.
You know, that's one. Eyesibini is to ensure that wonke umuntu ophumayo kulonyaka, their files are sorted out now and have a direct link with pensions in Pretoria to conclude the administration part of it. Because remember, kwaba bantu kukho abantu, some of them that started employment before 1995. I'm citing that example deliberately because ababaqashwa before 1995, you may not get their salary slips of 1972, of 1980, when they were employed. Now, make sure as government HR directorate that you bring in back the collective agreement of 2002, which covers the former Transkei and former Ciskei employees of that particular period. Knock sense with them now. Create a rapport with the affected individuals before they leave the system. Tell them that, do you have any evidence that you were appointed in 1976 or in 1980 or in 1985. If not, this is what is going to cover you, so that you don't have a clash between government and them when they are calculated using the model of that collective agreement. Because the problem is always like that.
Yeah.
Yes, so that's one. The third aspect is this category of the temporary teachers, your EPWP workers, your FMOs, and your should be cleaners, meal servers. Yes, should be meal servers. This week, we have signed the attachment to Treasury.
All right.
To deal with them, to clean them up, because the SG gave them an instruction to say we don't want any person that this government own. That was the instruction, that makungabikho muntu ohlupheka apha estratweni onemali yakhe ayikhomba apha. Yes, of course, lockdown has disorganized us a bit, because yiyo le izale lanto, because of the skeleton staff that we're using during that period. Even today, this morning, I have an employee that was calling me from the events directorate, which was querying that they have not been appointed. I mean, having been paid. Yes. So, but we have sorted out that, and the CFO have activated all processes to pay them. HR Ultuli has already requested a run in Treasury.
All right.
So we are waiting Treasury now to say your run will be either this week before Friday or Tuesday next week. Yeah. So, but I have said to them, it must not go beyond next week.
Yeah.
All of them must be paid not later than next week, so that we don't have this negative connotation about people that have not been paid. Whether they are coming from the business, whether they are coming from the workforce, whether they are coming from the service providers, clean up the database of people that have not been paid by this government.
Lastly, MEC, abantwana abangamantombazana wancuma uyayazi bandiyaphi. Sava nithetha ngemali ezinkulu zokubancedisa nge-sanitary towels.
Yes.
Where are we? Are schools getting? If they are not getting, how bakhalaza kubani bathini? Because umntwana wentombazana uyakwazi uyimisisha iveki yonke ingakwazi esikoleni kuba kanazi sanitary towels. And umcimbi we-sanitary towels yinto engenamsebenzi engumsebenzi ebekumele uba ifana neplate yokutya njengoba sine-nutrition nje ahamba umntana ofumana iplate yokutya nansi ipaketi sanitary towels. How is it that we are still having this conversation ngo-2020?
No, we honestly, we messed with that concept when we were doing the budget allocation, readjustment of the budget, if I can be honest with you, because Yona is part of the learner support material that should have been redesigned, but unfortunately we could not do that. Then we have a collaboration with the Department of Social Development to close up that gap. But our major weakness was to think that we can rely on that one. Because remember, education is bigger than social development. So when you talk budget constraints, social development cannot match it. So what we have done now was to say, as we have started the learner support procurement for next year, these needs for women must be part of the items that are going to be issued by the Department of Education now, not by the Department of Social Development, so that you don't play blame games. You don't play blame games. Of course, we welcome the intervention that was done by social development, but I'm saying it was not massive, and our weakness was not to augment the policy of the learner support material, wherein you must include that item as part of the.
Because it's a dignity issue.
Yes,
it's a dignity issue. It should.
In fact, immediately those young women undergo that process, you run a risk of absenteeism.
Yes.
You run a risk of absenteeism, and also you run a risk of discomfort, and therefore ultimately underperformance
And dropping out.
and dropouts. So government has adopted an interventionist character.
Okay.
You know, so there is no way that you can just willy-nilly think that that thing can just automatically happen. We must just make it happen ourselves. Hence, I'm pleased that you are reminding me now that as you prepare for the learner support material, to redefine it. And for example, the department has already started that redefinition of what learner support material
Should look like, yeah.
Yeah, precisely because you can't buy tablets as part of the learner support material massively now, as we're going to do it next year, but still have one concept of what learner support material means. Because in essence, it means come the end of 5 years to come, you might not have books as part of the learner support material. So you must revise the policy from time to time, make interventions like your assistance of the women in that particular regard.
Mrs. Teta.
Yes.
So 3 things you are guaranteeing is golo. 3 things. You're guaranteeing is golo in terms of, pushing your agenda of normalizing putting women.
Yeah, the democratization.
Yes. So what are the 3 things they should take away from this conversation?
One is the democratization of the workplace in the context of women leadership. Not just in schools, but also in the echelons of power and authority. Hence, I was saying earlier on, it won't be wise for women to be represented by men at an ideological level.
And as for
yes, at an ideological level is flawed because there have never been a gender or a class that represents another class in a battle of ideas.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's going to be important that we elevate women, take positions of power and authority within the sector, represents themselves, and be able to articulate the posture of women and the agenda of emancipation of the women generally, not just in the workplace only, but use the leverage of the strategic location of the department as a key site of power and influence in the society, because education was efumaneka kuzo zonke indawo. Eyesibini is to resolve the issue of abuse of women, abuse of kids. Last year we had an indaba for men. We do have that concept document. Ubani nayo mhlawumbe ningabanika xa behamba, so that they can also try to enrich it, because I don't think you are coming for the last time here. You stand invited back again. You stand invited. So that consciously we define the role of men proper. We be not feminists, but gender activists.
No, but we should all be feminists.
Yes. No. What I'm saying is let's be able to, from the men's side of point of view, we must be able to be gender activists. Ingabi yonto yomama gender activism.
Yes.
You know, ingabi yonto yomama into ye gender activism, because is our result to feminism. That's what I'm trying to explain. So which then becomes a problem for me. But the last aspect will be to ensure that again siya intervene kulento ye representation on the demographics of the business that participate in the economic scales of the department. Yes, we are not there. We are not there, but it's gonna be key because we're a bigger department.
Yes, yeah.
We are taking 45% of the budget. So if you turn the policies in education, you have turned almost half of the problems of the provincial government are sorted out. So that's why I'm always arguing that in the provincial government space, you have sorted out education and sorted out health and just sort few aspects of local government, cooperative and traditional affairs. That government will be stable. Because that's where the crack of the matter is within those three departments. You deal with education, you deal with health, you deal with local government and traditional cooperative services, corporate affairs. You have stabilized government of Eastern Cape, and in fact, stabilized government of the country.
Won't you add, though, as we conclude, even social development, because it's more than just the provision of social grants.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Enkosi kakhulu MEC,
No,
singancokola litshone ilanga, and enkosi ngexesha lakho, and yes, we shall talk soon.
No, nam ndibulela ngeleni ixesha because me I was also learning here.
Enkosi
So
kakhulu.
I would welcome you to come back again.
Enkosi kakhulu MEC, enkosi kakhulu.